Oh, here. I'll swap you out. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. I appreciate my colleagues for joining me here as well. I'll be brief because I'm told we're going to have votes a little sooner than we had planned. As you know, the Congressional Budget Office just recently announced that this year's deficit is going to be $1.35 trillion, not that much different from last year's $1.4 trillion deficit. What's even more troubling, though, is our long-term budget outlook, which shows spending, deficits, and debt essentially running out of control. The President and the current leadership in Congress are making this situation much worse. With the $1 trillion stimulus, their 12% increase in non-discretionary spending they just finished, and their huge new health care entitlement. The Democrats are now talking about budget commissions, pay-as-you-go, and spending freezes, and the President, no doubt tonight, will talk a lot about his newfound concern for budget discipline, but they don't offer any real policies to actually get control of spending. Even worse, in my view, are the ideas behind the Democrats' spending. Their progressive ideology is taking us down what I call a tipping point, after which the majority of Americans are dependent upon the federal government than they are upon themselves. A kind of European-style welfare state where high unemployment is a fixture and there's no reward for personal initiative and responsibility, and most people just expect the government to take care of them. I don't think that's how America became the greatest and most prosperous country in the world. But I believe it's not enough to simply criticize Democrats. We as Republicans have an obligation to offer real alternatives. And so that is why we are offering today a bill I offered a year and a half ago, reintroducing the Roadmap for America's Future. And the point of this is to show that even after this deteriorating fiscal situation we had, even after the big deficits and the economic crash, we can still get America back on track. And so the Roadmap for America's Future, version 2.0, is a reflection of a plan using real numbers, real data, with real legislation, showing America that it's not too late to turn this around and secure our fiscal future and leave our children better off. Now, this is not just a slimmer version of the Democratic agenda. And it's not just concepts and rhetoric. As I mentioned, it's real, actual legislation using the scoring, working with CBO to actually fix our fiscal problem, to do basically three things. Ensure the mission of health and retirement security, the mission of these entitlement programs, to lift the burden of debt that is mounting every day because of Washington's reckless spending, and third, to promote jobs and competitiveness in this 21st century global economy. You can read the details. Here's the report. You can go to AmericanRoadmap.org to get all of the details you'd like to see. I will briefly summarize these things before I turn it over to my colleagues. Number one, health care. The plan ensures universal access to affordable health insurance principally by restructuring the tax code, allowing all Americans to secure an affordable health plan that best suits their needs, and shifting control and ownership of health coverage away from government and employers to individuals. It also secures Medicare for current beneficiaries while making common sense reforms so that we can fulfill the mission of this program for future generations over the long term off its debt. Social Security. The roadmap makes Social Security permanently solvent as scored by the Congressional Office. For those over 55, no change. For those under 55, it provides the option of a third of their Social Security taxes going into their own personal retirement account, similar to the thrift savings plan for federal employees. The plan makes it solvent in many ways. Chief among them is for higher income individuals, a modest adjustment in the index of their benefits, and a over-gradual long-term increase in the retirement age. Tax reform. You have to reform the tax code if you're going to make America competitive in the 21st century economy. There is a new trend of foreign corporations taking over U.S. corporations, primarily and chiefly because of tax reasons. We are seeing a loss of America's economic dominance. We are seeing a loss of America's economic competitiveness. When you tax your employers and your businesses a lot more than your foreign competitors tax theirs, they get the jobs and we don't. We've got to address that. This roadmap offers an alternative to today's needlessly complex, cumbersome, and unfair tax code, providing the option of a simplified system that promotes work, saving, and investment. Two rates, 10% and 25%. 10% 10% on the first $100,000 for couples, 25% after that. No double taxation on capital. For corporations, which we tax corporations at the second highest tax rate in the world, we replaced the entire corporate income tax. Probably the worst corporate tax system in the industrialized world, and replace it with a very simple consumption tax, which rate is half that of the industrialized world. We border adjust the taxes so that you take taxes off of exports and put an equal tax on imports, exactly what our foreign competitors right now do to us. And all businesses can always write off in the first year all their investment in plants and equipment. That is to get jobs. And we also have to reflect that you don't have the same job for all of your life as a worker in the American economy, in the world economy. People change jobs. The economy keeps changing. So we have to have an education system that adapts with the 21st century economy. We have a 20th century job training system that needs to be reflected for the 21st century. So we streamline and block grant in ways to achieve that. The roadmap helps make sure that we basically achieve very, very important point, and that is this. We have a fundamental difference of opinion with the Democrats, their direction, and their ideology. They believe, through all of their policies, that people are stuck with their current station in life, and that it's government's job to help them cope with it. We don't believe in that. We believe in the American idea. What makes this country so exceptional is the idea of this country. And the idea of this country is that government helps promote equal opportunity so that people can make the most of their lives and reach their potential and their destiny. That is quite different than the philosophy dominating Washington right now. And where this change is going to occur is our fiscal situation. If we do not turn our fiscal situation around, reform government, we will see the best century in America will have been the last century in America. And so we want to renew the personal initiative, personal responsibility, sense of entrepreneurship and risk-taking that has been the hallmark of the American idea for the 21st century. And we want to maintain this distinct and unique American legacy of leaving the next generation better off. I will just go through some very brief charts before I turn it over. Look at what the roadmap does versus where we are today on federal government spending. This just shows you that over this course of this century, when my three kids, who will become my age, are going to see a government that is twice as big as it is right now. We know we're consigning the next generation to double the burden of taxation than we have right now just to keep this current government afloat. That's before cap and trade, before health care. This just shows you a plan to keep this under control. Look at the debt. This will be the undoing of America if we don't get this under control. Great empires of the world, great nations in history have not been defeated by external forces. They have been defeated internally. They've defeated themselves. Chief among them it is because of debt. This is the path we are on right now, the red path of debt. We are putting in place here an actual bill with real numbers and real scoring and real legislation to show how you pay off America's debt, how you make good on your obligations to current seniors and people near retirement, but get this situation under control and pay off our national debt. More importantly, it's really about this, standard of living. For the first time in our nation's history, we know irrefutably, statistically, it's something that cannot be refuted, that we are consigning the next generation, that's the red line, to an inferior standard of living. The way we measure standard of living is per capita GDP, economic growth per person. What this plan does, as using CBO's numbers, shows that we are getting our country back on the path to making sure that the next generation has a better standard of living. So that is really what is at stake here. It's not as if we have decades to sort this out. The fiscal crisis, the financial crisis, the recession, and this new government we have all hastened the moment whereby we must choose in America the path that's before us. And we have a choice of two futures right now. And we don't have much longer before we don't have that choice. Do we want a future where the next generation has a forever increasing standard of living, or do we want a future where we know that we are consigning the next generation to lower standards of living? That is really, at the end of the day, what is at stake here. I want to thank you all for coming, and at this time I'd like to turn over to the Vice Ranking Member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Hensarling.
Thank you, Paul. Since I first came to Congress 7 years ago, the nation has been on a dubious fiscal path. Since the Democrats took control of Congress and President Obama was president, we've gone from a dubious fiscal path to an unsustainable fiscal path to a ruinous fiscal path. I do not think that there is sufficient draconian language that can be used to describe the state of the nation's fiscal health. The time to act is now of the United States of America. So I want to applaud the ranking member of the Budget Committee for frankly putting forth one of the most important pieces of legislation, not just of this Congress, but of this generation. And that's what this is about. We both have young children. And unless we do something to control entitlement spending, we will ensure that the next generation has less freedom, less opportunity, and a lower standard of living. And you know what? The American people now more than ever are saying, we're tired of the debt, we're tired of the deficit. And in its essence, what Congressman Ryan's plan does is simply say to the American people, you know what? The health plan that your member of Congress enjoys, we want you to enjoy that health plan. The retirement plan that your member of Congress enjoys, the thrift savings plan, we want you to enjoy that plan. And we're going to do it in such a way that your children will have a brighter future. Thank you.
Congressman Devin-Nunes, who is one of the leaders and greatest supporters of fixing our fiscal future, member of the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you, Paul. I describe it this way. There's only two ways to skin this cat. You can either go far left and have a European socialistic type of economy where it's going to lead to these numbers that Paul showed, or you can decentralize government and get it back in the hands of the individual. These are the only two roads we can go down. There's no other way to do it. And the difference between what we have here and all the other plans that are talked about is this plan is credible. It's been scored by CBO. It's a zero cost. You can see what it does to the trend lines. And so my challenge to the members of the press and the media that are here is to challenge Democrats and Republicans on what their plans are for America's future. Because if we don't change, if we continue down the path that we're headed, we cannot possibly pay the debt that we are incurring on a day-to-day basis. Just a half hour ago, Paul and I were together having lunch, and he was analyzing the Democrats' current budget. Today, we're roughly around $200 billion in debt per year, or interest on debt. In 10 years, that's going to near $1 trillion in 10 years. So this is serious stuff. And I am so glad that Paul has invited all of us to work together on this because when I'm out talking to constituents, when they ask, do you have a plan? As of today, I can say, yes, we have a plan, and it's very credible. And so we're going to work with other Republicans. We'll reach out to Democrats, and whoever wants to work with us to put America on a path for future generations so that we don't incur this debt that is piling up ever so quickly. Thank you.
Roscoe, you want to say anything? Congressman Roscoe-Bartlett from nearby Maryland.
Yeah, thank you. I have 10 kids and 17 grandkids and 2 great-grandkids, so I have a huge interest in this roadmap. I want to comment very briefly on 2 of the great suggestions there. One is that the employee should own the health care policy. 2 really good things happen there. One, if you buy it when you're 18 and keep it till your grave, pre-existing conditions essentially go away, and about a third of the uninsured go away because about a third of the uninsured are simply between jobs. And if that health care plan is a health savings kind of a plan, a lot of really good things happen there. A huge amount of administrative costs go away, which may account for a fourth of all health care costs. Most of those go away because you don't have the 5 people trying to collect for the 5-doctor group. Patients now will be careful shop. You think about it, health care is the one thing that most people shop for and never ask the cost. Now they will because it's their money, it rolls over, it's tax-free, it will keep rolling over, and by the way, if it's still there at their death, it becomes a part of their estate and it goes to their kids. They're going to practice preventive health care because it's their money. You know, a lot of really good things happen if you do this. The other thing I wanted to comment on was corporate tax. You know, you really can't tax a corporation. It simply becomes a part of the cost of doing business, and they pass it on to the consumer. It is, in fact, the most regressive tax that we have. Reducing it is great. Bringing it to zero is really good, because now everything that the poor guy buys is going to cost less if there's no corporate tax on it. And he may have a job so that he can buy it because his employer now can stay in this country and make the product here. So thank you very much for this great roadmap. Thank you.
Mike Burgess, do you want Mike Burgess from Texas.
Paul, I just want to thank you for putting forward what is clearly the most optimistic vision of our country's future that I've seen in some time. I was happy to support 6110 last Congress. Clearly that was just the beginning. Now we see the much more mature product. And, you know, Paul, I'll just go out on a limb and say, I think you've created the Whoopi Goldberg plan for America. Whoopi was on The View last week and said, you know what, member of Congress, I want what you got. Well, you know what, Whoopi? I want you to have what I got. It's called a health savings account, bought in the national market across state lines. I get to keep the money that's not spent on my medical care. It rolls over year to year. I want you to have that. She said, I want your retirement plan. You know what, Whoopi? I want you to have that retirement plan too. It's called a thrift savings plan. Paul has very intelligently designed his plan around what works very well for federal employees. So this is an optimistic outlook. Otherwise, what do we have? European socialism, or this draconian group that's going to come to us with spending cuts every year. We simply get to vote up or down, and you know what we'll do. We've done it time and again in the past with doctor reimbursement. We don't cut when the time comes to cut. So as a consequence, the deficit just goes higher and higher. Eventually, the thing is unsustainable and collapses of its own weight, as Paul so cleverly articulated. But thank you for letting me be part of this, and I appreciate the forward-looking vision that you've had in this.
Thank you, Mike. Had I known about Whoopi's quote, I would have invited her to the press conference. I didn't realize it. That's great to hear. Questions, anybody? Yeah.
Congressman, how does your plan differ from the one you reported?
It's updated to reflect current economic realities with new baselines using CBO numbers. We relied last time on the actuaries of CMS and Social Security for our numbers. This time we relied on CBO's long-term model to do our numbers.
But the policies?
The policies are very similar. We have we do a job training component to this, which we did not have before. To streamline, we have 49 different job training programs scattered across 8 different agencies, I think. That's right. We need to streamline that stuff. Look, where I live, we lost 4 auto factories in the 1st District in 2008 and 2009. Lots of people, 2 of my neighbors who lost their job at the plant. And so these are friends of mine from high school, you know, people who are 30s and 40s, out of work, you know, and need to get a new training to get into a new industry so they can have a good way of life. And I believe in this 21st century economy, you have to have sort of a lifelong learning kind of a system where you can marry the economy of tomorrow with the education system so that people can go and get retrained and get on to a better standard of living with a better career. So I think just watching the economic pain that has occurred just over the last year and a half, I try to reflect those realities into this. To me, it's all about paying off our debt, getting our economy ready for the 21st century so that we lead, not just survive the 21st century global economy, and looking at what these programs do. They can't go on as planned. The Social Security, Medicare won't be there for my generation, let alone my children's generation. These programs are going themselves right into extinction. So you got to reform those programs to fulfill the mission of those programs in a responsible way, and I think that's what we do. Mike said it right. Look, the alternative right now is just ignore this thing. The administration is making it worse by adding on top of it, but the worst thing than making it worse and adding on top of it is doing nothing. And that simply means, right now, if you fix it, you can make a deal with the people who are in and near retirement. We're not going to pull the rug out from under you. You organize your lives around these programs, your retirement. We can hold you harmless if we act now, and people under the age of 55 will, I think, have a better program. This makes them better, but also they'll have time to adjust their lives. If we do the irresponsible thing, succumb to political demagoguery, and do nothing, then those kinds of things won't be possible. You will be rudely disrupting people's lives who are already out of work because they've already retired. And to me, that's what this is all about. So a few new ideas using CBO's numbers are basically what this is. Yeah?
Can you talk just a second about the percentage of our economy that entitlement spending consumes and what your plan will do to change that?
I think the way to look at it is overall spending. So overall spending historically for the last 40 years has been about 20% of GDP. As you can see, where is spending? It's going up and up and up. It's going to 40% of GDP. I'm 39 years old until 2 days from now, and my kids are 5, 6, and 7. So for the last 40 years, government spend 20% of GDP. When my kids are my age, government's going to be 40% of GDP, and on and on and on. We actually asked CBO to run the numbers. What would income tax rates have to be if we're going to just raise income tax rates to pay for all of this? The bottom tax bracket, the 10% bracket, would go to 25%. The middle income tax bracket for middle income Americans would go to 66%. And the top tax bracket, which is what the small businesses pay, would go to 88%. You literally crash our economy. And so what we're saying here is let's keep government at the same size that it has historically been so that our economy, our government is limited and our economy is free. If we don't do that now, we are on this unsustainable trajectory where literally the government overtakes the economy and we debt finance this thing. You can't literally raise enough taxes to pay for all of this. It's not possible. And so that's the point. Pick it now before the baby boomers are deep into retirement, before it's too late, before government grows at such unsustainable levels that it crashes our economy. Yeah.
You say you have universal access to health care. Do you have any estimate from CBO or anyone else on
coverage rates?
Yeah.
I do not have a score on coverage rates. This is a bill that a number of us, Devin-Nunes, myself, Tom Coburn, Richard Burr, put, and that's what's new in this as well. To go back to your question, it's a little different than the healthcare bill and the roadmap. Very similar, but it has more details reflecting this Patient's Choice Act that we have. We don't have specific coverage estimates. We believe, from our own estimates and looking at outside scoring, that essentially everybody uninsured will get insured, because everybody will have a refundable tax credit with which they can use to buy health insurance across state lines, or if they even have a pre-existing condition, the risk pools we set up make it sure that people with pre-existing conditions can still get affordable health care. We have an auto-enrollment strategy so that if you're a person who doesn't have health insurance, but you interact with government in some way, you know, the DMV or wherever, you're auto-enrolled into a basic health care insurance plan. So we really believe effectively that this gets the uninsured, fully insured. Yeah?
The CBO said yesterday that the current budget trend will add $6 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. Do you support cutting federal spending by that amount over the next 10 years?
Yeah, look, this is what we're showing you. We're showing you you can put in place a plan. Debt will increase no matter what, simply because of the boomers, because of demographics. But you have to, it's all about trajectory. Are we putting in a plan that shows that we're getting it taken care of? This is the debt plan. Are we putting in place a plan that shows, we call this sort of the, I probably shouldn't say this, we call this the pig and the python. So if you take a look at spending, you're going to have a demographic bump because baby boomers, we're going from 40 million retirees to 80 million retirees. So do you have a plan in place to make sure that we have the debt going down over time? The debt will rise for a while because of the boomers, but the question is, do we have the reforms in place that make sure that it goes down? If you do that, then you have credibility as an economy. Then investors, foreign and domestic, will buy your treasury bonds because they know you're getting it under control. The alternative to that is the current situation, which is debt literally just goes through the roof. I mean, it goes up to 400% of GDP. It's literally unsustainable. So debt will increase in this country no matter what budget you pass. The question is, are you have a plan that gets that debt under control? And what we show using CBO numbers is not only do we get it under control, but we actually are locking in a plan to pay it off. Yeah?
Is this in essence the economic platform Republicans plan to contest the 2012 election?
This is not the 2012 election? Or, I mean, we missed one there. No, I wouldn't say this is in essence. This is something that I put together a few years ago, a year and a half ago. I worked with a lot of colleagues on these ideas, and this is us contributing some ideas to the table. This is, I am not the leader. It is not the Republican plan. This is our idea on how to fix this problem. I really feel obligated as a member of the alternative party to put up alternatives. I spent a lot of time criticizing the Democrats as the ranking member of the Budget Committee because I think they're being worse than fiscally irresponsible. I also believe that I have an obligation to offer alternatives to show people that there's a better, different way to go, and that's what we're doing. I can't speak for the Republican Party because I'm just one member of it.
Has leadership endorsed or given indication support?
We haven't really even had those conversations.
But the leader is talking about coming up with a platform, call it the contract or 10 for 10, whatever. So which of these ideas would you like to see? All
of them. I'd like to see all of these ideas in it. Yeah.
What do you think has the greatest sellability to the American public?
Look, we're going to have our retreat this weekend. We're going to be talking amongst ourselves about this. All of us have ideas we're going to be bringing to the table. But look, the centerpiece, this is my opinion, of course, of our message to the American people has got to be, we learned from our mistakes of the past as a Republican majority. That we have to acknowledge. Number two, we're not going to repeat them, and we're going to come up with plans to make sure we get this fiscal situation under control, that we get our economy growing again. We are not pursuing economic growth strategies today, and we are driving our country into the ditch of debt. We have to go to the American people with alternatives to that so that we can fix this problem. There are plenty of other issues that are very, very important, but none of them, they all pale in comparison to the tsunami of debt and taxes that we have. We know we're going to have a bad economy if we don't turn this thing around. So that's got to be front and center in my opinion. Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
I would just add, that's kind of what I was indicating, that there's only really two paths you can take.
There's only really two paths that you can take on this. And so, we're going to work with our Republican colleagues. We just got the CBO score, I think just to this morning, right? So, now we're going to take this to the retreat, and we're going to be working with the leadership to try to make them, go at least in the direction where this legislation goes, which is a big picture solution to a lot of problems.
Yeah, Diana.
I think one of you mentioned the commission and opposition to it. Why haven't Republicans embraced that idea if in fact the lawmakers can't do it themselves?
This is the plan to do it. I'm saying instead of doing a vague commission where we outsource the discretion of Congress, here's a plan to just actually do it. This is what I would do if I was the commission, or if we were the commission. Here's the problem many of us see with the commission right now. I think it's going to lead, I think it has potential to lead to be a big tax increase commission. Even the Republican architects of the idea of the commission, who have great intentions, are opposing this commission because it's been more politicized. It's been more stacked in favor of Democrats controlling the outcome of it. So it's really not a bipartisan commission. Point one. Point two, I personally think Congress should just do its job. I mean, we were elected by our constituents to come here and make the tough choices to do the right thing. We should do that instead of punting to somebody else to do that for us.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess we'll have to wait till tonight to see the precise details of whatever commission that the President is proposing. But at least his first iteration, just to amplify what Paul said, they could send out a report with a majority of Democrats and President Obama appointees. That's not a bipartisan product. That's not going to do the heavy lifting of the nation. And at the end of the day, we don't need a deficit commission, we need a spending commission. That's the deficit is the symptom, spending is the disease. Listen, I'm happy to hear the President say it, but at the end of the day, I don't think many Republicans want to sign up for a program that's simply going to impose roughly a 60% tax increase on the American people over the next decade simply to balance the budget.
One of the...
Okay, well, Jonathan's been so patient, raising his hands the whole time. And then, go ahead, Jonathan, then we'll go to you last. Okay, yeah, go.
But to get back to the spending versus taxing issue, though, I mean, the deficit, spending was revenues were 14.9%.
And they're coming back up, as you know they will.
60 years. I mean, so exactly how is it the spending problem if revenues are the lowest they've grown in 60 years?
Look at the baseline, look at the trajectory going forward. You know, and I know you know this, the spending overwhelms us because of entitlements. There is so much spending here that's on autopilot that's growing at 7 to 8% a year. We're doubling the amount of consumers of the programs. You literally cannot tax your way out of this. That's just not me saying this. That's CBO, GAO, whoever says this, Brookings. So the spending is the problem. The spending baseline just goes up so fast, so furiously, that you literally cannot raise taxes enough to close that gap. And if you try to raise taxes to close that gap, the collateral damage is the American economy. It's people being able to get jobs in this 21st century global economy. That's the problem that is not being recognized here in this country in this century, which is this. We've got to be lean and competitive in order to have good jobs in this economy. And if we keep thinking we can just raise taxes to close the fiscal gap, number one, arithmetic, it doesn't work. Number two, you make us really uncompetitive and people won't get good jobs. So you got to keep our tax burden low and go after spending because, as Jeb said, spending is the disease.
But when revenue's at a 60-year low, there's not room.
But you know revenues will recover if we get the economy growing again. So let's have good pro-growth economic policy to get the economy to recover so that then, yes, revenues will recover.
It seems like there's also some low-hanging.
Well, I just wanted to say that the government programs that are in place now are broke, and not just financially broke. They're broke. I mean, that was the problem with the whole health care debate that the Democrats engaged in, is they were trying to make Medicaid bigger. And you know, most of us in our districts, we're lucky if 20% of the Medicaid patients or 20% of the docs will see Medicaid patients. And so we're broke fiscally, and the government programs aren't working, and this plan makes them all better.
Give you the last word.
Low-hanging fruit on spending, something like earmarks. Is it time for Republicans to cut? I know Mr. Hensarling has been big on this issue, but is it time for Republicans to just say, we're this serious, we want to be fiscally responsible, we're swearing off earmarks?
I swore them off 3 years ago. So yeah, should we have an earmark moratorium? We're well known in advocating an earmark moratorium. We've been talking about that for years. Earmarks are a speck on the windshield. I mean, I think it's symbolic, I think it's cultural, and I think we should have a moratorium, but it's tiny compared to the fiscal problem we have. Entitlements are the big driver, and if we ignore entitlements, we do so at our own peril. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.